William's hand trembled as he held the folded paper. The palace guard had delivered it 15 minutes ago, his face pale and uncertain. Now, sitting alone in his private study, William read the single line a second time. His chest tightened. The words didn't make sense, yet they explained everything that had been happening over the past 3 weeks. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, the gardens were still. Inside, William felt the weight of a secret that could break his family apart. It was a cold Thursday morning when everything started to unravel. Kate had been unusually quiet at breakfast. She stirred her tea without drinking it, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the window. William noticed, but said nothing. They had both learned to carry their burdens silently in this life. Privacy was a luxury. Emotion was a risk, but this was different. 3 weeks earlier, Kate had started walking the palace corridors late at night. The guards noticed first. They kept logs of unusual activity, a routine procedure for security. At first it seemed harmless. Stress, perhaps, sleeplessness. Many royals struggled with the pressure. But then the walks became longer. She would disappear for nearly an hour, always between midnight and 2 in the morning. One guard, a man named Thomas, had been assigned to follow at a distance. He was discreet, experienced, loyal. He filed reports, but kept them minimal. Nothing alarming, just movement. Until last Tuesday, if you're drawn into this story, don't miss what happens next. Subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss an emotional story like this one. Thomas had followed Kate to the East Wing that night. It was a part of the palace rarely used anymore. Old portraits lined the walls. The air smelled of dust and history. Kate stopped outside a locked door. Thomas watched from the shadows as she pulled a key from her pocket. She opened the door and stepped inside. Thomas waited. 5 minutes. 10, 15. When Kate finally emerged, her face was streaked with tears. She closed the door carefully, locked it again, and walked back toward her chambers without a word. Thomas didn't know what to do. Protocol said report everything. Instinct said stay quiet. He filed the report the next morning, marking it confidential. It went directly to William's senior advisor, and now, 4 days later, it had reached William himself. William read the line again. His throat felt dry. The Duchess entered the sealed room. She was crying when she came out. The sealed room. William knew exactly which one Thomas meant. It had been locked for 2 years. No one was supposed to go in there. Not even him. Especially not Kate. He stood up and walked to the window. The morning light made the frost on the glass shimmer. His reflection stared back at him, pale and uncertain. He had spent his entire life preparing for responsibility, for duty, for leadership. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Kate had a key. She had been going there in secret. And she had been crying. William folded the report and slipped it into his jacket pocket. His mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Was she in danger? Was someone threatening her? Or was this something else entirely, something he had failed to see? He glanced at the clock. Kate would be meeting with her staff in 20 minutes. He had time. Not much, but enough. William left the study and walked quickly through the corridors. His footsteps echoed on the marble floors. Guards nodded as he passed, their faces neutral and professional. No one knew what he was about to do. He reached the East Wing and stopped outside the sealed room. The door looked the same as it always had, plain, unremarkable, but behind it lay something powerful enough to bring his wife to tears. William reached for the handle. It was locked, just as he expected. He didn't have a key. Kate did. He stood there for a long moment, his hand resting on the cold metal. Then he turned and walked away. Whatever was inside that room, Kate had kept it from him for a reason. William returned to his study and closed the door behind him. His mind wouldn't stop spinning. He couldn't confront Kate directly, not yet. If she had wanted him to know, she would have told him. But the secrecy worried him more than anything else. He pulled the report from his pocket and read it a third time, searching for details he might have missed. Thomas had written it carefully, professionally. No emotion, just facts. But between the lines, William could sense the guard's concern. The phone on his desk buzzed. It was his private secretary, reminding him of the afternoon's schedule. A meeting with the Prime Minister. A charity appearance. A dinner with foreign diplomats. The machine of royal life kept turning, no matter what personal storms raged beneath the surface. William ignored the phone. He sat down and opened his laptop, typing quickly. Palace security records were accessible to him, though he rarely looked at them. He scrolled through the logs from the past month, searching for patterns. There it was. Kate's movements documented in quiet detail. The first late-night walk had been on October 20th, then October 27th, November 2nd, November 8th. Always late, always alone, and always ending at the East Wing. William leaned back in his chair. His chest felt heavy. He thought about their last real conversation, the one where they had spoken about more than schedules and obligations. It had been weeks ago, maybe longer. They had become experts at existing side by side without truly connecting. He closed the laptop and stood up. He needed to think. He needed air. William left the palace through a side entrance and walked into the gardens. The cold bit at his face, but he welcomed it. The hedges were trimmed perfectly, the paths swept clean, everything in its place, everything controlled. Except this, a voice called out behind him. Sir William turned. It was Thomas, the guard from the report. He stood at a respectful distance, his uniform crisp, his expression uncertain. Thomas, William said quietly, walk with me. They moved through the garden together, their breath visible in the cold air. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, William broke the silence. Your report. Tell me what you saw. Everything. Thomas hesitated. Sir, I included all relevant details in the file. I'm not asking what you wrote. I'm asking what you saw. Thomas swallowed hard. He was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a steady demeanor. He had been with palace security for 6 years. William trusted him. She looked. Lost, Sir Thomas said carefully. When she came out of the room, she wasn't just crying. She looked broken, like she'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. William's jaw tightened. Did she see you? No, sir. I stayed back. She never knew I was there, and you're certain she had a key? Yes, sir. She took it from her coat pocket, used it without hesitation, like she'd done it before. William nodded slowly. The pieces were forming a picture he didn't want to see. Kate wasn't being threatened. She wasn't in danger from someone else. This was something internal, something private, something she had deliberately hidden from him. Has anyone else read your report? William asked. Only your senior advisor, sir? And now you. Keep it that way. If anyone asks, tell them the matter is closed. Of course, sir. William stopped walking and turned to face Thomas directly. I need you to do something for me. Tonight, if the Duchess walks again, I want you to let her. Don't follow. Don't record it. Just let her go. Thomas looked confused, but nodded. Understood, sir. And Thomas? Thank you. For your discretion. The guard bowed his head slightly and walked back toward the palace. William stood alone in the garden, the wind pulling at his jacket. He felt the weight of the decision settling over him. He would wait. He would watch. And when the moment was right, he would find out what Kate had been hiding. That evening, William sat in the drawing room with Kate. She was reading a book, her face calm and composed. The fireplace crackled softly. Outside, darkness had fallen over the palace grounds. You seem tired, William said gently. Kate looked up, surprised. Do I? You've been working hard. Too hard, maybe. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. No more than usual? William wanted to press further. He wanted to ask about the walks, the room, the tears. But something stopped him. Fear, perhaps. Or respect for whatever boundary she had drawn. If you ever need to talk, he said carefully, About anything, I'm here. Eh? Kate's expression softened. For a moment, he thought she might say something. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes searching his face. Then the moment passed. "I know," she said quietly. "Thank you." They returned to their silence. Wow. Two people sharing a space but living in separate worlds. Later that night, William lay awake in bed. The palace was silent around him. He checked his watch. 12-30. If Kate followed her pattern, she would leave soon. At 12:45, he heard the soft click of a door closing down the hall. William waited 5 minutes before slipping out of bed. He dressed quickly in the dark, pulling on casual clothes and soft shoes. His heart pounded in his chest as he opened his door and stepped into the corridor. The palace at night felt different. The lights were dimmed. Shadows stretched across the walls. Every sound seemed louder, more significant. William moved quietly, keeping to the edges of the hallway. Where the floorboards were less likely to creak, he had told Thomas not to follow Kate tonight. But he hadn't said anything about following her himself. Kate was already far ahead. William caught glimpses of her figure turning corners, moving with purpose through the maze of corridors. She wore a long coat over her nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders. She didn't look back. She didn't hesitate. William's pulse quickened as they entered the East Wing. The air here felt heavier, older. Portraits of ancestors watched from the walls with stern expressions. Kate stopped outside the sealed room, exactly as Thomas had described. William pressed himself into a doorway hidden in shadow. He watched as Kate pulled the key from her pocket. Her hand shook slightly as she unlocked the door. She paused before entering, her shoulders rising and falling with a deep breath. Then she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. William waited. The silence was absolute. He counted the seconds, then the minutes. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. He crept closer to the door, his footsteps barely a whisper. He pressed his ear against the wood and listened. At first, nothing. Then he heard it. Soft crying. Not loud or dramatic, but quiet and broken. The sound made his chest ache. Kate was weeping. The sound was filled with a grief so deep it seemed to come from somewhere ancient. William's hand went to the door handle. He could push it open right now. He could demand answers. But something stopped him. The vulnerability in her crying felt sacred, private. To intrude now would be to shatter something fragile. He stepped back from the door and leaned against the opposite wall. He would wait for her to come out. Then he would decide what to do. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Kate emerged, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Her face was red and puffy. She locked the door carefully, slipping the key back into her pocket. Then she turned and began walking back toward her chambers. William stayed hidden as she passed. Once she was out of sight, he approached the door. He tried the handle. Locked, as expected. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the plain wood. What was inside? What memory or secret or burden had Kate been carrying to this place night after night? William thought back to 2 years ago when the room had been sealed. He remembered the decision being made quietly, without ceremony. It had been Kate's request. She had wanted the room closed, locked away. At the time, he had thought it was about preservation, about protecting something valuable. Now he wondered if it had been about protecting herself. The next morning, William sat at breakfast with a new determination. Kate joined him, looking tired but composed. She sipped her tea and reviewed the day's schedule on her tablet. "I need to speak with your lady-in-waiting," William said casually. "About the East Wing renovations?" Kate's hand froze for just a fraction of a second. Her eyes flickered to his face, searching. "Renovations? The Historical Society has been asking about restoration work. I thought I'd review which rooms might benefit." Kate set down her cup carefully. "The East Wing is fine as it is. Some of the rooms haven't been opened in years. It might be worth no." Her voice was firm, almost sharp. Then she softened. I don't think it's necessary. Those rooms they're preserved for a reason." William watched her closely. "Of course. I'll let them know." Eh? Kate nodded and returned to her tablet, but her hands trembled slightly. She knew. She knew he was circling closer to her secret. That afternoon, William made a decision. He called his senior advisor into his study and closed the door. "I need you to find out who has keys to the sealed room in the East Wing," William said. The advisor, a man named Richard, with 30 years of palace service, raised his eyebrows slightly. "The sealed room, sir?" "Yes, I want to know who authorized the sealing, who holds keys, and what's inside." Richard hesitated. "Sir, that information is ... sensitive." "I'm aware. That's why I'm asking you." "The Duchess requested the sealing herself, sir." After the incident, William's stomach dropped. "What incident?" Richard looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I assumed you knew. 2 years ago, when the pregnancy was lost, the Duchess. She requested that particular room be sealed. It held personal items, memories. She said it was too painful to have it accessible." The words hit William like a physical blow. The pregnancy. He remembered now. They had been so hopeful, so careful. And then, at 12 weeks, everything had fallen apart. Kate had been devastated, but she had grieved privately, quietly, the way they were taught to handle pain in this life. He had tried to support her. But maybe he hadn't tried hard enough. Maybe he had been too focused on duty, on moving forward, on maintaining the appearance of strength. "Who else has a key?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "As far as I know, sir, only the Duchess." William nodded slowly. "Thank you, Richard. That will be all." After the advisor left, William sat alone in his study, his head in his hands. Kate had been returning to that room night after night, surrounded by memories of the child they had lost. She had been grieving alone, in secret, because she thought she had to, or because he had made her feel like she had to. William canceled his afternoon appointments. He told his staff he was unwell, which wasn't entirely untrue. His chest felt tight, his mind clouded with guilt and realization. For 2 years, Kate had been carrying this grief alone, and he had been too blind, too busy, too focused on duty to see it. He walked through the palace without destination, his feet carrying him through familiar corridors while his mind replayed the past 2 years. The distance that had grown between them. The conversations that had become purely functional. The way Kate's smile had become something she wore like a uniform. He found himself in the portrait gallery, surrounded by generations of faces. His ancestors stared down at him with their painted eyes, silent witnesses to centuries of royal life. How many of them had struggled with private pain? How many had learned to bury emotion beneath duty? William stopped in front of a portrait of his grandmother. She had always seemed so strong, so unshakable. But he remembered a conversation from years ago, when he was young and newly engaged. She had pulled him aside at a family gathering and spoken quietly. "Marriage in this life is complicated," she had said. "You will both carry burdens the world will never see. The question is whether you carry them together or apart." At the time, he hadn't fully understood. Now, standing alone in the gallery, her words cut through him. He and Kate had chosen apart. Or perhaps he had chosen it for her, by never creating space for vulnerability. By always prioritizing strength over honesty, William left the gallery and made his way to Kate's private office. Her assistant looked surprised to see him. "Is the Duchess available?" William asked. "She's in a meeting with the Charity Foundation, sir. Should be finished in about 20 minutes. What?" William nodded. "I'll wait." He sat in the small receiving area outside Kate's office, his hands clasped between his knees. Staff members passed by, offering polite nods. Everyone moved with purpose, with efficiency. The palace was a machine. They were all parts keeping it running. When Kate finally emerged from her meeting, she was laughing at something one of the foundation directors had said. The sound was light and genuine, so different from the quiet crying William had heard the night before. When she saw him waiting, her expression shifted to surprise. "William, is everything all right? Can we talk?" Privately, Kate's smile faded. She nodded and led him into her office, closing the door behind them. The room was neat and organized, with photos carefully arranged on her desk. Family photos, official photos. None of the child they had lost. "What's wrong?" Kate asked, concern creasing her forehead. William looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in months. He saw the tiredness around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the careful mask she wore so well. "I know about the room," he said quietly. Kate's face went pale. She took a small step backward, her hand reaching for the desk as if she needed support. "What? The East Wing? The sealed room?" "I know you've been going there at night." Kate's eyes widened, then filled with something that looked like panic. "How did you the guards keep logs?" "It's their job." William moved closer to her, keeping his voice gentle. "Kate, why didn't you tell me?" She turned away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. "Tell you what? That I'm still grieving something that happened 2 years ago? That I can't seem to move on the way everyone expects. I don't expect you to move on, don't you?" She spun back to face him, and now her eyes were wet with tears. "We never talk about it, William. Never. It's like it didn't happen. Like that baby didn't exist." The words struck him hard. "That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you mentioned it? When was the last time we acknowledged what we lost?" William opened his mouth but found no words. She was right. He had pushed forward, buried the grief beneath duty and obligation. He had thought he was being strong. He had thought he was helping them both heal. "I didn't know you were still hurting," he said, his voice breaking slightly. Kate laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Of course I'm still hurting. I'll always be hurting. But I learned to hide it because that's what we do here. We smile. We wave. We pretend everything is fine. You shouldn't have had to hide it from me. You never asked." The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. William felt tears threatening his own eyes. "You're right. I'm sorry. I should have asked. I should have been there." Kate's shoulders slumped. She sank into her desk chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "I keep their things in that room. The baby clothes we'd started buying, the blanket my mother made, a journal I kept during those 12 weeks. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes I just need to be close to them, to remember that they were real, even if no one else does." William knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "I remember. I think about them too. I just didn't know how to talk about it. I used to be able to talk about everything," Kate said, tears streaming down her face now. "When did we stop?" William thought about all the pressures that had built up over the years. The scrutiny, the expectations, the constant performance of their public lives. Somewhere along the way, they had forgotten how to be vulnerable with each other. "I want to start again," William said. "I want to be the person you can talk to. About anything. Even the painful things. Especially the painful things." Kate looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. Then she nodded slowly. "I want that too. But William, I don't know if I can just... flip a switch. I've been alone with this for so long. And don't flip a switch. We'll take it slowly. Together." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The night walks. They help me. I know it sounds strange, but being in that room, surrounded by those memories, it makes me feel connected to them, like they're not completely gone. I understand. And you can keep going. But maybe..." William paused, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe sometimes I could come with you. If you'd let me." Kate's breath caught. "You'd want to?" "Yes. I've been grieving too, Kate, just differently. Maybe wrongly. I threw myself into work, into duty, because I didn't know what else to do. But I miss them too. Every day." Fresh tears spilled down Kate's cheeks. "I thought I was protecting you by keeping it private. I thought you'd moved on, and I was holding you back. You could never hold me back. You're my partner. We're supposed to carry these things together." For the first time in a long while, Kate leaned into him. William wrapped his arms around her, holding her as she cried. The office was quiet, except for the sound of her grief. Finally shared, when Kate's tears slowed, she pulled back slightly and looked at him. "There's something I need to show you." In the room, that night, Kate led William to the East Wing. The corridors were empty, the palace silent. Kate unlocked the door with steady hands this time, no longer hiding. Inside, the room was smaller than William expected. Soft lighting came from a single lamp in the corner. The walls were painted a gentle cream color. Against one wall stood a white crib that had never been used. Shelves held tiny clothes folded carefully. Books about becoming parents. A mobile with soft animals that would have hung above the crib. In the center of the room was a comfortable chair with a small table beside it. On the table sat a leather journal and a framed ultrasound image. The only picture they had of their child. William's throat tightened as he took it all in. This room was a memorial, a sacred space Kate had built to honor a life that had barely begun, but had meant everything. "I come here to talk to them," Kate said quietly. "To tell them about our days. To imagine what they would have been like." She picked up the journal and held it to her chest. "Is that strange?" "No," William said, his voice thick. "It's beautiful." They sat together in the chair, Kate leaning against William's shoulder. For a long time, neither spoke. They simply existed in the space, feeling the weight of what they had lost and what they still had in each other. "I was afraid," Kate said eventually. "After the miscarriage, I was so afraid to try again. Afraid to hope again. And I didn't know how to tell you that." William kissed the top of her head. "I was afraid too. I thought if we didn't talk about it, the fear would go away. But it doesn't work that way, does it?" "No, it just grows in the silence." They stayed in the room for over an hour, sharing memories and tears and quiet moments of peace. Kate told him about the nights she had spent here, the conversations she'd had with their lost child, the dreams she still carried. William listened and shared his own grief. The moments when he would see a baby and feel an ache he couldn't name. The way he had thrown himself into work to avoid the emptiness. Before they left, Kate took William's hand and placed it on the ultrasound image. "I want you to come here with me sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. So we can remember together." "I'd like that," William said, as they walked back through the palace corridors. Kate's hand in his, William felt something shift. The distance that had grown between them hadn't disappeared completely, but there was a bridge now. A connection re-established through honesty and shared pain. The next morning, William woke to find Kate already awake beside him. She was reading something she hadn't done in bed in years. The morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden. "Good morning," she said, looking over at him with a small smile. "Morning." William reached for her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Lighter," Kate said. "Scared, but lighter. Like maybe I don't have to carry everything alone anymore." "You don't. I'm here. I'm sorry it took me so long to really show up." Kate squeezed his hand. "We both made mistakes. We're learning." That day, they attended their scheduled events together. To everyone else, they looked the same as always. Polished, professional, united. But between them, something had changed. Small glances held meaning. Brief touches carried reassurance. They were finding their way back to each other that evening. William asked his senior advisor to have the guard reports about Kate's movements destroyed. "What the Duchess does in the privacy of the palace is no one's business but ours," he said firmly. Richard nodded. "Of course, sir. I'll see to it immediately." Later, William found Thomas during his rounds. "Thank you," William said simply, "for your discretion and your compassion." Thomas looked surprised. "Sir, I was just doing my job." "No, you did more than that. You saw someone in pain, and you reported it with respect. That matters." The guard nodded, a flush of pride coloring his cheeks. 2 weeks passed. William and Kate fell into a new rhythm. They still had their public duties, their separate schedules, their moments of distance. But now, there was also honesty, vulnerability, connection. Some nights they visited the room together. Other nights, Kate went alone, and William didn't question it. He understood now that her grief was her own to navigate, but that she no longer had to navigate it in complete isolation. They began talking in the evenings, really talking, about fears and hopes and the small, difficult things they had both been hiding. Kate told him about the guilt she felt, wondering if she had done something wrong during the pregnancy. William told her about the helplessness he had felt, wanting to fix her pain but having no power to do so. "You can't fix it," Kate said one night as they sat together by the fireplace. "But you can sit with me in it. That's what I needed all along." William learned that lesson slowly. He stopped trying to solve Kate's grief and simply learned to be present in it. Some days were harder than others. Some days, Kate needed space. Other days, she needed closeness. William learned to read the signals, to ask instead of assume. One afternoon, Kate came to William's study with a proposition. "I want to do something," she said. "Something meaningful." For other families who've lost pregnancies, William looked up from his desk. "What are you thinking?" "A foundation. Or at least a significant charity initiative. There's so much silence around pregnancy loss. So much shame. I want to help break that." William stood and walked around the desk to her. "That's a beautiful idea." Kate's eyes were bright with purpose. "I know it means going public about what we went through. I know it means being vulnerable in front of the world. But I think it could help people. I think it could matter. Then let's do it." They spent the next month working with advisors and charity organizations, carefully planning how to share their story. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when Kate wondered if they were doing the right thing. But William stood beside her, supporting her vision while letting her lead. The day they released their statement was nerve-wracking. Kate's hands shook as she reviewed the final draft one more time. William sat beside her in their private sitting room, reading over her shoulder. The statement was simple and honest. They spoke about the pregnancy they had lost 2 years ago, about the grief that had followed, about the importance of acknowledging pregnancy loss and supporting families through it. They announced a new charitable initiative to fund counseling services and support groups. "Are you ready?" William asked. Kate took a deep breath. "Yes, I think so." The response was overwhelming. Within hours, messages poured in from around the world. People sharing their own stories of loss, thanking Kate for her bravery, expressing relief that someone was finally talking about something so many had experienced in silence. Kate read the messages with tears in her eyes. "I didn't realize how many people were carrying this alone." "You're helping them," William said. "You're helping all of them." That night, they visited the room together. Kate lit a small candle and placed it on the table beside the ultrasound image. "I think they'd be proud," she said softly, "that something good came from our loss." William wrapped his arm around her. "I think so too." As the weeks turned into months, William and Kate's relationship continued to heal and deepen. They weren't perfect. They still had disagreements, still had moments of miscommunication. But they had learned to come back to each other, to talk through the hard things, to not let silence build walls between them. The charitable initiative grew beyond their expectations. Support groups formed across the country, counseling services expanded, and everywhere people spoke more openly about pregnancy loss. Breaking the silence that had surrounded it for so long, Kate threw herself into the work with a passion William hadn't seen in years. She met with families, visited hospitals, spoke at events. Each conversation, each connection, seemed to bring her more peace. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Kate stopped and turned to William. "I've been thinking," she said carefully, "about trying again." "For another baby?" William's heart jumped. "Are you sure?" "No," Kate admitted. "I'm terrified, but I'm also hopeful. And I think maybe that's enough. Maybe we don't need certainty. Maybe we just need hope in each other." William pulled her close. "Then we'll try together. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Kate nodded against his chest. Together. That night, for the first time since the miscarriage, they talked about the future with genuine hope. They acknowledged the fear, the risk, the possibility of more loss, but they also acknowledged the possibility of joy, of new life, of healing through hope rather than avoidance. The room in the East Wing remained as it was. Kate still visited sometimes, though less frequently now. It would always be a place of memory and honor. But it was no longer a place of isolation. William had learned something profound through all of this. That strength wasn't about pushing through pain alone. That duty didn't mean sacrificing humanity. That love meant being present in suffering, not just in joy. 1 year after William read the guard's report that changed everything. He stood with Kate at a charity event for their pregnancy loss initiative. They watched as families connected, as people shared their stories, as healing happened in community rather than isolation.
Yes.
"We did this," Kate whispered to him.
You did.
William corrected gently. "I just learned to show up." Kate smiled and leaned into him. "That's all I ever needed. For you to show up." The palace, with all its traditions and expectations, would always be part of their lives. But within its walls, they had carved out something real, something honest. A partnership built not on perfection, but on the courage to be vulnerable and the commitment to face life's pain and joy together. The guard's report had revealed a crisis, but it had also revealed an opportunity, a chance to rebuild, a chance to choose connection over distance, a chance to transform private grief into shared healing, both within their marriage and in the wider world. And in that transformation, William and Kate found not just survival, but a deeper, more resilient kind of love. The kind that could hold both sorrow and hope. The kind that could weather storms because it was rooted in truth. They were learning, growing, healing together, and that made all the difference.